The people who change your life rarely arrive looking important. At exactly 8:12 that morning, a black limousine rolled to a stop in front of Riverstone Grill, and every employee inside the restaurant froze. The polished vehicle stretched nearly 20 feet along the curb, its glossy surface reflecting the pale autumn sunlight like a mirror. Customers slowed down as they walked past the windows. A delivery driver stopped unloading boxes. Even the cooks in the kitchen peeked through the swinging doors to see what was happening. Derek Collins stood near the hostess station with a grin spreading across his face. He had been bragging for days about a mysterious investor who might visit the restaurant. Someone wealthy, someone powerful, someone who could finally notice his management skills. He straightened his tie and smoothed back his hair as the limousine's rear door opened. The entire dining room seemed to hold its breath. Then Derek's smile vanished. Because the man stepping out wasn't a famous executive. He wasn't a celebrity chef. He wasn't a businessman anyone recognized from television. He was an old man. The same old man Derek had thrown out of the restaurant less than 24 hours earlier. Yesterday, his coat had been stained and worn. His shoes had looked ready to fall apart. His gray beard had been untrimmed. Most people never looked at him twice. But today he wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. A silver watch caught the sunlight on his wrist. Two men in dark business attire followed behind him, carrying leather portfolios. The old man paused beside the limousine and looked directly at the restaurant entrance. Derek's face drained of color. A nervous laugh escaped him. It had to be a mistake. It had to be. Yet deep inside, he already knew it wasn't. The old man's calm expression never changed. He simply adjusted his jacket and began walking toward the entrance. Each step seemed to make the silence heavier. Employees exchanged confused glances. Customers whispered to one another. Nobody understood what was happening. Nobody except Derek. Because Derek remembered exactly what had happened yesterday afternoon. He remembered the hungry old man standing near the front door. He remembered ordering him to leave. And most of all, he remembered the young waitress who had chosen kindness over obedience. Claire Whitmore, the woman he had fired in front of everyone. The woman who wasn't even here to witness what was about to happen. As the old man reached the entrance, his reflection briefly appeared in the glass doors. Wealth, confidence, authority. Nothing about him resembled the homeless stranger from the day before. The doors opened. The old man stepped inside. And at that moment, Derek Collins realized the worst day of his career had only just begun. 24 hours earlier, none of this seemed possible. 24 hours earlier, Claire Whitmore was standing in the employee break room, counting the cash left in her wallet. $37. That was all she had until payday. She stared at the bills for a moment before carefully folding them and slipping them back inside. Rent was due in 4 days. Her mother's prescription refill was due next week. And her 12-year-old brother Ethan needed a new pair of sneakers because the soles of his current ones were beginning to separate. Every dollar already had a purpose before she earned it. Outside the small break room window, the October sky hung gray over the city. The air carried the promise of rain. Claire grabbed her apron, tied it neatly around her waist, and forced a smile before stepping onto the restaurant floor. Customers never wanted to see the weight people carried. They came for lunch, for business meetings, for celebrations. They wanted cheerful greetings and warm meals. Claire understood that. It was one reason customers often requested her section. She remembered names. She listened. She treated the construction worker ordering coffee the same way she treated the attorney ordering a $70 steak. Derek Collins often called it a waste of energy. He believed attention should be reserved for people who spent the most money. Claire disagreed. She always had. By 11:30, Riverstone Grill was beginning to fill. Silverware clinked softly. Conversations floated through the dining room. The scent of grilled chicken and fresh bread drifted from the kitchen. Claire moved from table to table with practiced ease, balancing trays and refilling drinks. Nobody looking at her would have guessed how carefully she calculated every expense in her life. Nobody would have known she often skipped dinner so her brother could have seconds. Around noon, her phone vibrated in her apron pocket. During a brief moment between tables, she glanced at the screen. A message from Ethan. Good luck today. Mom is feeling better. A small smile touched her face. It was enough to keep her going. Then the front door opened. At first, nobody paid much attention. People entered restaurants every day. But slowly conversations began to quiet. Heads turned. Claire looked up from a table she was clearing and saw an elderly man standing just inside the entrance. His coat was faded and worn. His shoes looked soaked from walking. Tiny drops of rain glistened on his shoulders. He held no umbrella, no bags, nothing except a tired expression and eyes that seemed older than the city itself. The hostess hesitated. Several customers exchanged uncomfortable glances. And from across the room, Derek Collins narrowed his eyes. Claire did not know it yet, but the next few minutes would change every part of her life. The old man remained near the entrance as if he understood he was not welcome. Rainwater dripped quietly from the edge of his coat onto the floor mat beneath his feet. He looked around the dining room with calm eyes, not demanding attention, not asking for sympathy, just waiting. Claire noticed something unusual immediately. Most people in his situation carried embarrassment, frustration, or desperation across their faces. This man carried none of those things. He simply looked tired, very tired. The hostess glanced nervously toward Derek. That was all it took. Derek marched across the dining room with the confidence of a man who believed he controlled everything inside those walls. His polished shoes clicked sharply against the hardwood floor. Several customers lowered their voices, sensing an uncomfortable scene approaching. "Sir," Derek said, forcing a smile that never reached his eyes, "this restaurant is for paying customers." The old man nodded politely. "I understand." His voice was steady and surprisingly refined. "I was hoping to buy something small to eat." Derek's expression tightened. He looked the man up and down. The worn coat, the weathered shoes, the graying beard. Then he laughed softly under his breath. "I think it would be best if you moved along." A few customers returned to their meals. Others continued watching. Claire felt a knot form in her stomach. Something about the exchange felt wrong. The old man did not argue. He did not raise his voice. He simply reached into his pocket and pulled out a few crumpled bills. "I have enough for soup," he said quietly. "That is all I need." For a brief second, silence settled over the room. Derek barely looked at the money. "We reserve the right to refuse service," he replied. "Please leave before you disturb our guests." The old man's eyes drifted across the dining room. Not angry, not offended, just disappointed. Claire watched him carefully. There was a sadness there that reminded her of her grandfather during his final years. A sadness that came from being overlooked rather than being poor. The old man slowly folded the bills and returned them to his pocket. "Of course," he said. Then he turned toward the door. Claire glanced at the tray in her hands, then toward the kitchen, then back at the old man. Every instinct told her to stay out of it. She needed this job. She needed every hour on her paycheck. Rent, medicine, groceries. Reality was already difficult enough. But as the old man reached for the door handle, she noticed his hand tremble slightly. Not from age, from hunger. And in that moment, Claire Whitmore made a decision that would cost her everything she thought she could not afford to lose. Claire set down her tray and hurried toward the entrance before she could change her mind. The old man had already stepped outside beneath the gray afternoon sky. Cold rain drifted through the air, carried by a steady wind that pushed fallen leaves across the sidewalk. "Sir," she called. He stopped and turned. Up close, he looked even more exhausted. Deep lines marked his face. His coat hung loosely from his shoulders, yet his eyes remained calm. Claire reached into her apron pocket and pulled out the small meal voucher every employee received for lunch. She had been saving it all morning. Normally, she would use it near the end of her shift. Today it was supposed to be her dinner as well. "Please wait here," she said. The old man looked surprised. "You do not have to do that." Claire offered a small smile. "I know." She disappeared back inside before he could argue. The kitchen buzzed with activity. Plates moved across counters. Orders were called out. Nobody paid attention as she quietly handed her meal voucher to one of the cooks. 5 minutes later, she carried out a steaming bowl of chicken noodle soup, a turkey sandwich, and a cup of hot coffee. Nothing expensive, nothing extraordinary, just a warm meal. The old man stared at the tray as if it were something priceless. "I cannot pay for this," he said softly. "You already did," Claire replied. "You reminded me that being hungry is harder than being late for lunch." For the first time, a faint smile appeared on his face. He accepted the tray carefully and sat down at an empty outdoor table beneath the awning. Rain tapped gently against the fabric overhead. Claire placed the coffee beside him. The rich aroma rose into the cool air. "Thank you," he said. The words sounded genuine, not automatic, not polite, Real. Claire nodded and started back toward the restaurant. Then she heard him speak again. Miss Whitmore. She stopped. Her eyes widened slightly. She had never told him her name. The old man seemed to notice her confusion. His smile deepened. Your name tag, he explained. Claire laughed quietly at herself. Right. The old man lifted the coffee cup between his hands. The world needs more people like you. Claire shook her head. The world probably needs more soup. He chuckled softly. It was the first hint of warmth she had seen from him. For a moment, neither spoke. The city noise faded into the background. Rain, traffic, distant sirens, life moving forward. Then Claire returned to work, believing the moment was over, believing she had simply helped a hungry stranger. She did not see the thoughtful expression on the old man's face as he watched her walk away. And she certainly did not know that from that moment forward, every choice she made was being carefully observed. For the next hour, Claire tried to focus on work. She refilled coffee cups, delivered orders, and greeted customers with the same calm smile she always wore. Yet she could feel Derek watching her. Every time she crossed the dining room, his eyes seemed to follow. The feeling settled like a storm cloud she could not ignore. Outside, the old man remained beneath the awning, slowly finishing his meal. He ate with quiet appreciation, never rushing, never asking for more. Several customers glanced toward him through the windows. Most quickly looked away. A few shook their heads. Others simply returned to their conversations. By 2 o'clock, the lunch crowd had begun to thin. Claire carried a stack of plates toward the kitchen when a sharp voice stopped her. My office. Now. Derek stood near the register with his arms crossed. The expression on his face told her everything she needed to know. A few employees exchanged nervous glances. Nobody said a word. Claire placed the plates down carefully and followed him. The office door closed behind them. The small room suddenly felt even smaller. Derek dropped a meal voucher onto the desk between them. Want to explain this? Claire looked at it. Her stomach tightened. I used my employee meal. You gave restaurant food to a homeless man. I gave him my lunch. Derek laughed bitterly. You embarrassed me in front of customers. Claire remained silent. Derek leaned forward. Do you have any idea how businesses work? I know how people work, Claire replied quietly. His jaw tightened. People like him scare paying customers away. Claire thought about the old man sitting alone in the rain. She thought about the trembling hand reaching for the door. She thought about the simple gratitude in his voice. I do not believe kindness hurts business. Derek slammed a hand onto the desk. The sudden sound echoed through the office. I am not interested in your opinions. The room fell silent. Claire could hear dishes clattering in the kitchen beyond the wall. Life continuing as though nothing important was happening. Derek picked up a folder and tossed it onto the desk. You are finished here. The words landed harder than she expected, even though part of her had seen them coming. You are firing me? Effective immediately. Claire stared at him. Rent. Groceries. Her mother's medication. Ethan's shoes. Every responsibility flashed through her mind at once. Derek seemed almost pleased by the shock on her face. And do not bother asking for a recommendation. Claire swallowed carefully. Then she lifted her chin. If helping a hungry man costs me this job, then I can live with that. Derek smiled coldly. That attitude is exactly why you are unemployed. Neither of them noticed the old man outside the window, quietly watching, listening to every word. Claire cleaned out her locker in less than 3 minutes. There was not much to take. A faded family photo, a spare notebook, a blue sweater she kept for cold mornings. The ordinary pieces of an ordinary life. Outside the break room, the restaurant continued operating as if nothing had happened. Orders were placed. Plates were served. Glasses clinked softly. The world moved forward without pausing for one waitress who had just lost her job. Claire slipped the photograph into her purse and looked at it for a moment. Her mother smiled from a folding lawn chair at a summer picnic years earlier. Ethan stood beside her, missing one front tooth and laughing at something outside the frame. Claire took a slow breath and closed the purse. She could not afford to fall apart. Not yet. When she stepped outside, the rain had stopped. The clouds still hung low over the city, turning the afternoon lights silver and gray. The old man was gone. Only the empty coffee cup remained on the outdoor table. Claire felt a strange disappointment. She had not expected gratitude. She had not expected anything at all. But part of her had hoped he got somewhere warm. As she walked toward the bus stop, her phone rang. It was her mother. Claire forced brightness into her voice before answering. "Hi, Mom. How was work today?" The question landed heavily. Claire looked across the street at passing cars. "A little complicated. Mothers always know, even over the phone, even through forced smiles." "What happened?" Claire hesitated. Then she told the truth. Not every detail, just enough. Silence followed. Finally, her mother spoke. "Are you sorry you helped him?" Claire thought about the soup, the sandwich, the coffee warming cold hands beneath the awning. "No." "Then you did the right thing." Tears threatened for the first time all day. Claire blinked them away. "The right thing was expensive." Her mother laughed softly. "The right thing usually is." After the call ended, Claire sat alone on a bench near the bus stop. Wind carried fallen leaves across the sidewalk. She stared at the traffic moving through the intersection. For the first time, fear began creeping in. Rent was due soon. The savings account was almost empty. Another job would take time to find. She opened her purse to check how much cash remained. That was when she noticed something she had not seen before. Folded carefully between the family photo and her notebook was a small cream-colored card. Claire frowned. She pulled it out slowly. There was no logo, no advertisement, no explanation. Only a name written in elegant lettering. William Harrington. Beneath the name was a phone number. Nothing else. Claire stared at the card for several seconds. Then she slipped it back into her purse. She had no idea why the old man had given it to her. And she certainly did not know that before sunrise, the name on that card would be on everyone's lips inside Riverstone Grill. Claire barely slept that night. Long after Ethan had gone to bed and the apartment had fallen quiet, she sat at the small kitchen table staring at the cream-colored card. William Harrington. The name meant nothing to her. She considered calling the number more than once. Each time, she stopped herself. What would she even say? Thank you for the card? Thank you for the soup conversation? Eventually, she slipped it back into her purse and went to bed. Morning arrived cold and clear. Sunlight spilled through the apartment window, painting long golden lines across the floor. Claire was making coffee when her phone buzzed. It was a text from a former co-worker at Riverstone Grill. 3 words. "You need this." Attached was a photo. Claire opened it. Her eyes widened instantly. Parked in front of the restaurant was a black limousine. Not a rental. Not a luxury ride service. A genuine executive limousine surrounded by several expensive vehicles. Another message arrived. "The whole staff is freaking out. Apparently some huge investor is here." Claire stared at the screen. A strange feeling settled in her chest. Meanwhile, across town, Riverstone Grill had never been quieter. Employees stood near windows pretending to work while secretly watching the parking lot. Even customers seemed distracted. Derek Collins moved through the dining room with forced confidence, adjusting his tie every few minutes. He had spent most of the morning telling everyone that an important business opportunity was about to transform the restaurant. When the limousine finally arrived, he practically rushed to the entrance. This was his moment, his reward, his future. The rear door opened. Conversation stopped. Silverware froze halfway to mouths. Nobody moved. Then a polished black shoe touched the pavement, followed by another. A tall man in a tailored suit stepped out first. Then a second. Both carried leather portfolios. Both wore expressions of professional discipline. Finally, the third passenger emerged. The old man. Yesterday's rain-soaked stranger. Yesterday's unwanted guest. Yesterday's hungry man. Gasps spread across the room. Several employees stared openly. One hostess nearly dropped a stack of menus. Derek's confident smile vanished so quickly it was almost painful to watch. William Harrington adjusted the sleeve of his charcoal suit and looked toward the restaurant entrance. Gone were the worn coat and weathered appearance. In their place stood a man who carried authority as naturally as breathing. A man accustomed to boardrooms, negotiations, and decisions worth millions of dollars. The silence became overwhelming. Then one of the executives beside him spoke loudly enough for everyone near the entrance to hear. "Good morning, Mr. Harrington. The acquisition paperwork was finalized at 6:30. Riverstone Grill and every location in the chain now officially belongs to Harrington Hospitality Group." And at that exact moment, Derek Collins realized yesterday had not gone the way he thought it had. William Harrington entered the restaurant without rushing. He did not need to. The room seemed to move around him. Employees straightened their posture. Customers whispered behind menus. Even the kitchen staff peeked through the service window. Derek hurried forward with a nervous smile. "Mr. Harrington, welcome. Had I known who you were yesterday, I would have personally arranged the finest table in the house. William stopped walking. The silence that followed felt heavier than any reply. Then he spoke. That is precisely the problem. Derek blinked. Sir. William slowly looked around the dining room. Yesterday, I did not come here as William Harrington. I came here as a hungry old man. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. William continued. For 6 months, I have visited restaurants throughout this company without revealing my identity. I wanted to see how people were treated when there was nothing to gain from helping them. Several employees exchanged nervous glances. Derek's smile began to fade. William's gaze settled on him. Calm, direct, unavoidable. Some managers impressed me. Some disappointed me. But yesterday was unique. Derek swallowed. There may have been a misunderstanding. No, William replied. There was perfect understanding. The words landed like stones. William accepted a folder from one of the executives beside him and opened it. You refused service to a man offering payment. You judged a customer based entirely on appearance. Then you publicly terminated an employee for showing compassion. Derek's face turned pale. Sir, company policy. William raised one hand. Derek immediately stopped speaking. Not because he was ordered to, because the authority behind the gesture made arguments seem pointless. Do not blame policy for personal choices. The room remained silent. William closed the folder. The young woman you fired gave away her own meal. Not company property. Not inventory. Her meal. Several employees nodded quietly. They had witnessed everything. William looked toward the front windows where rain had fallen the previous day. She expected nothing in return. No audience. No reward. No recognition. She simply saw someone hungry. For the first time, genuine emotion appeared in his voice. That is the kind of person every company should hope to hire. Derek opened his mouth again, but no words came out. William turned to one of his executives. Effective immediately, Derek Collins is relieved of all management responsibilities. The executive nodded and made a note. A quiet gasp moved through the dining room. Derek stood frozen. Not angry. Not shocked. Simply unable to understand how quickly everything had changed. William glanced around the restaurant one final time. Now there is only one employee I wish to speak with. His eyes settled on the entrance. The problem is she is no longer here. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and removed a familiar cream-colored card. The same card Claire Whitmore had found in her purse the night before. An hour later, Claire was sitting at the same kitchen table where she had spent the previous night worrying about rent and bills. A notebook lay open in front of her. She was making a list of restaurants that might be hiring when her phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. For a moment, she considered ignoring it. Then she answered. Hello. A calm voice replied immediately. Miss Whitmore, this is William Harrington. Claire sat upright so quickly that her chair nearly tipped backward. Silence filled the room. She looked at the cream-colored card resting beside her coffee mug. I was wondering when you might call, William said gently. Claire laughed nervously. Actually, I was wondering the same thing. There was warmth in his voice when he answered. Would you be willing to meet me? Less than 2 hours later, Claire found herself walking into a private conference room overlooking the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows stretched toward the skyline. Sunlight reflected from glass towers in every direction. The setting felt completely disconnected from her life. William stood when she entered. Not because protocol required it. Because respect did. Thank you for coming, he said. Claire took a seat across from him. I still do not understand why I am here. William smiled. That is exactly why you belong here. He slid a folder across the table. Claire opened it carefully. Her eyes widened as she read the first page. It was not a check, not a gift, not a reward. It was an employment offer. Director of Customer Experience and Employee Culture. Harrington Hospitality Group. Claire looked up in disbelief. There has to be some mistake. William shook his head. There is not. He folded his hands on the table. For years I have invested in restaurants, buildings, equipment, technology. Yet I have learned that none of those things determine whether a company succeeds. Claire listened quietly. People do, William continued. Character does. He leaned back slightly. Yesterday, I met dozens of employees. Most followed procedures. A few followed orders. Only one followed her conscience. Claire stared at the offer again. The salary alone would change her family's future. Her mother's treatments. Ethan's education. The constant pressure that had followed her for years. William seemed to understand exactly what she was feeling. I am not offering you this position because you gave away a sandwich and a bowl of soup. Claire looked up. You are not. William smiled. No, I am offering it because you were willing to do the right thing when it came with a cost. The room grew quiet. Beyond the windows, the city continued moving below them. Millions of people rushing through ordinary days. Claire thought about the rain, the outdoor table, the coffee cup warming cold hands. One small decision. One simple act of kindness. Nothing more. Yet somehow everything had changed. William extended his hand across the table. What do you say, Miss Whitmore? Claire smiled for the first time in what felt like forever and shook his hand. And years later, when people asked William Harrington what the best investment of his career had been, he never mentioned a building, a company, or a stock. He simply smiled and said that sometimes the greatest return comes from believing in a good person before the rest of the world notices them.